I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here today. The South has been through it, y'all. The fact that we're here, I'm so grateful for that. And as I am talking about grief, I do want you to take moments of care throughout this conversation, because we understand that we are all experiencing grief all at the same time, and we still show up. So thank you for being here. And if you have an emotional support rock, so do I. In 2018, I realized a dream to work with high school students, to have the first student-led farmers market here in Memphis, especially in an area that was considered a food desert, where there's no full-service grocery store. I never got to see it. 2 days before the market opened, my mother calls. Abuela's in the hospital. You need to come down here. Within 24 hours, I left all my plans aside and took the next flight to Santiago, Dominican Republic. My grandmother is the reason why I'm an American. She loved her café con leche in the mornings and beers in the evenings, a fría. And she was also an entrepreneur. She had her own dry cleaning delivery service in the 90s, before Uber. She's an innovator. And before she retired, she made the decision to go back to Dominican Republic. A few days after my family arrived, my grandmother passes away for complications of a stroke. Something that is preventable, something that if it was caught on time, my family was devastated. And on the day of her funeral, I realized her and I shared the same profession. She was a poet and an educator. She never saw me teach in front of a classroom, and I never saw her recite a poem. I felt this immense amount of regret in the ways I didn't show up. I was going to school, getting my master's in public health. I could have made time, but I didn't. Grieving my grandmother was more about than her existence on earth. It was more the relationship and the story I didn't get a chance to hear. I only got my grandmother to show me el sueño americano, the American dream. I never got a chance to see her own. So they say that grief is a way for us to place love in the place where there's loss. And for me, after multiple forms of injustice and the way in which my grandmother passed and the multiple losses I was experiencing, I couldn't sit with that. So I'd stay stuck until I couldn't run anymore. And therefore, after some deep reflection, I realized that grief is a foundation to change, where we can no longer run away from it. And in that way, that's how we are able to compost our own collective grief for radical imagination. In 2020, we had a reckoning. It was the pandemic, wildfires. The sky was orange in California for 2 days, y'all. And it was something that we could no longer run from. While there was a pandemic, it was also known as the summer of racial reckoning, the summer of 2020. This was an image where I was on a bridge in Oakland protesting for the injustices that we were seeing day to day. We were bearing witness, and the pandemic pushed us in a place where we have to collectively grieve together, collectively. So that's how I started to believe that in order for us to have a new future, we couldn't take what we were feeling in 2020 and therefore make a change. So how do we do that? What's the process of actually composting grief? Let's take, for example, Memphis, the place I call home. I'm a health equity scholar where I talk about the ways in which racism and discrimination affects individual and collective people and the collective community. We can start seeing that when we start looking back into the past, we can uncover ways in which racist policies like redlining, like limited funding to certain areas where parks and schools do not have full access for people to actually explore. We start to see that the reason why we see the health inequities that we see today is due to a racist past. So in order for us to dream of a new way, we have to figure out how to compost the multiple injustices that are causing grief to individuals and reflecting in disease. So in a way, what does it mean to compost grief? How many of you are farmers or have a garden? Okay, y'all know your compost is that rich soil, y'all, where it's gold standard. But what's made out of this compost? Leaves, branches, food you left from yesterday. It is not the best, not the prettiest, and not the best smelling sometimes. But it allows us to create a space, provide renewal, to give us something that we'll be able to use again. So when we start thinking about injustices in a way that it's through the natural world, we can see how transformative it can be. That's what led me to research. In my research, I do community engaged practice, where I work with communities, we center our stories, we talk to each other, we strategize. And the work that I've done with the Memphis Black Healers Collective, which I am a co-organizer from, and I see someone in the audience who is also part of it, the founder. We make healing accessible by talking about what we experienced, finding new ways to advocate for ourselves, and provide new futures for our families and our individuals. For example, for infant mortality rate, it's one of the highest here in the city. It still has been for the past 15 years. What are we doing? So what we decided to do, instead of having a talk about how to protect your child, we held a grief circle where we shared the stories of the life that was lost. We made it to reality by providing information with them so that they can advocate for themselves when they're faced with their primary care physician or their OBGYN. And on the same spectrum of care, we worked with doulas and birth workers and gave them a space for rest. They are holding this grief with them too. We're all grieving in the process. So we decided to provide this continuum of care and have a community of practice that centers healing, wellness, and mental health resources. So that's how, in a way, that we're able to transform our grief into new futures. We're doing this one step at a time. It's kind of coincidental that the stages of grief also align with the stages of organizing. How many of y'all know about the 7 stages of grief? A few of you. Research has showed that grief is so complex that 5 stages does not do justice in order to explain what's happening. And so the first stage is shock. You probably felt a shock this week of an injustice that you were able to realize. And then there's some sort of denial, a space for denial, like, is this really happening? And on the other end, are they really saying what they're saying? So we start getting to a bargaining where people are advocating for themselves while others are trying to suppress at the same time. So we have this tension. And what happens next, y'all, when we don't get exactly what we're trying to strive for? I hear it. You get angry. And what we see that is what we see on the news. Protest. People are organizing. Someone stopped the bridge, the economic implications of that. And we start to see that this outward form of anger, why is this happening? There's a critical piece that we haven't had a chance to talk about, which is testing. This is why I believe that if we center grief in a health equity practice, we're able to address the health inequities in today. This is where we need to start thinking of new ways, of new opportunities, new frameworks and new paradigms. This is where that testing happens that leads us to acceptance, where we have to face a new future, where we know that we're able to collectively work together. So I want to practice with y'all as I leave with you off the stage. I invite you all to take a collective breath with me. So that if you feel comfortable, close your eyes, and if you want, you can have a smile gaze to the front. We're going to take 3 breaths. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Exhale through the mouth. Inhale. Exhale. And last, the deepest breath you've taken all day. Take a deep breath in. Exhale. As I leave you all today, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the moment to create space within you. As I leave off the stage, maybe notice something different, a new perspective. And in the ways in which we're able to compost our collective grief for a radical imagination, you just did that today. We're able to have a new perspective when we take the time to breathe and work with each other. So create that space along with each and every one of you from where you are. Act locally, think globally. Thank you.